everyone. Welcome back to Dry Conversations. I'm your host, Whitney Cowell. Joining me today is Charlie Saffro with CS Recruiting. So, hi, Charlie.
Hi, Whitney. I'm so excited to be here chatting with you.
I'm excited to have you here. For anybody that may not know who you are, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing today?
Sure thing. So, I am the founder and CEO of a third-party recruiting firm called CS Recruiting. We specialize in logistics, supply chain, and transportation, which I'm assuming is a big part of your audience. So we have a team, just about 25 people. We are recruiting nationwide, helping 3PLs, asset providers, manufacturers, distributors, everything in between, find the right professional talent for their needs. So we are very passionate about obviously attracting talent, but then after talent is onboarded, the whole retention game and what a company culture can do to create success for the individual, but obviously for the bottom line too. So that's what I do. I'm also a mom of 3 teenage boys and a girl dog, and a wife of almost 25 years. Crazy.
Doing all kinds of things,
Right?
impacting a lot of lives in a lot of ways.
I try to.
Well, I wanted to, sit down and talk with you because sobriety is becoming a trendy thing, and it's what I do. It's what I'm about. And I know that in a lot of ways, you are an advocate for their well-being, the total person. And that's a really big foundational piece of the organization that you've started and that you lead today. And so I would like to just dive into, how you take care of the people that work for you and honestly that you also serve, because I know that you serve the people in your organization.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I mean, I started this business when I had just had my third son. I had 3 kids under the age of 4. I had a very chaotic lifestyle. I wasn't even trying to start a business. It was just a side hustle that had a lot of opportunity. And when I started it, I was mindful of myself. I was a solopreneur for probably the first year, schlepping my kids to preschool and then sitting in the pickup line, taking a call and doing it all when I could. I joke that when I had my third son, I was able to spend like a lot of time on LinkedIn, because when he would wake up in the middle of the night, I would just go on there and like connect with people over and over to stay awake while I would give him a bottle. And so that's the kind of side hustle I had, and it worked. And then when I decided to grow, I hired my first employee. And it's an interesting story. This was in 2010. I hired Beth, who is still on my team today. And I said to her, listen, I'm going to get an office. This was like, I'm going to make it a real company now. We'll get an office. But I can't come in on Wednesdays because I don't have childcare, and I have to leave at noon on Fridays because my kids get out of school, half day. And so she's like, okay, so should I still be commuting to come to this office when you're not here? And I was like, no. So going back to 2010, we had a hybrid model before hybrid was a thing.
Right.
It was literally a deal I made with my first employee for my work-life balance. And also just obviously respecting, like, why would I make her, commute from a train to a bus to a, 2-block walk if I wasn't going to be there?
Right.
I honestly think, the reason I'm sharing this story is because that has set kind of the whole precedent for who we are as a company. When we went to hire our second employee, it was like, oh, wait, we should offer this to them too, and our third employee. And so just creating a culture where flexibility is granted, but it's earned through trust. We hire adults. We like to trust them, but we also treat our people like humans and understand like work is not all they do. So how can we help them find, just like a little more harmony, because work is creating space for them and relationships and connections. So it's something we've really, really focused on since the beginning.
How do you maintain that kind of balance in your work today? Because you are a very busy person and you hire very busy people. And you do so much. And so I'm wondering, how do you maintain that, like you said, that work-life balance today? What does that look like?
Myself personally, or It's interesting. I was at a women's event last night, and a woman said, I think we need to stop talking about work-life balance because we will never find balance, and we need to think of it
Mm.
like harmony. And so I guess that's kind of how I've always lived. Like I said, like I will be completely focused with my kids, but I'll have my laptop in the car. So when I'm waiting the 10 minutes for them, I'm being productive. And like, I know that might sound crazy to people, but to me, that's the harmony. Like, nobody's stopping me from doing what I want to do during the day, but I'm also getting the stuff I need to do done, and, and still being respectful to the people I'm working with. I don't know if I have balance. I'll just be very honest with that answer, but I think I'm finding harmony, and I truly love what I do, so it makes it a lot easier.
Yeah, I love the idea of harmony because I think just like in most things there are seasons, and so for some people it's a season of work where there's no such thing as spare time, downtime, or off time, right? Like it in that a season of building and scaling and growing, and that looks really different than the season of harvest where you have time to unplug, and sometimes those seasons are weeks and sometimes they're years.
Exactly, exactly. And it really is amazing how my career, I mean, 15 years at, owning this company and running this company, my seasons have changed a lot. And so when I think back, like I have teenagers now. I started the business when I had three in diapers. Now two of them drive, one's going to college, one doesn't need me or, want to be with me if I want to be with him. So now I can travel a bit more. I can do, more of the, I'd say, like organic networking that I wasn't doing for so many years because
Yeah.
it was just too much to take on.
How do you then help people in your organization find that harmony? Because some of us, myself included, we're not taught that, in our early careers. I was in an organization that was not a thing, right? Like I was a cog in the wheel, and that's okay. But sometimes it is learning that it's okay to ask for that kind of harmony and advocate for yourself.
Yeah. I mean, I had to really deprogram myself. And I think my team pushed me a lot to do this. And I say that in the sense where, I was raised where success is being productive. Success is, being motivated, having that fire in your belly, changing lives. And so when I don't know, as I just start to think back to like the whole history of it, it's always been about trusting our people and giving our people opportunity to kind of create their own path, not so much like the work from home flexibility, but just again, we see them as humans. And so
Yes.
it's like if I know you as a human and I know what your lifestyle's about, and, even just chatting for 5 minutes, I saw that you have two dogs. If you called me one day and said, one of my dogs needs to go to the vet, and I know how important your dogs are to you, that's a whole different conversation than you being a cog asking me to come in 2 hours late.
Yeah.
And I think that is really like how we have just gone about this, is looking at our people as humans and really listening to them too, because not every decision we've made has been the right one. And, I have to really solicit and do some crowdsourcing to make sure we're always on the right track there.
Yeah. So what are the hard lessons that you've learned? Because like you said, we don't get it right every time the first time.
Hmm. Um, Gosh, there's probably too many to list, but I'll share one that I talk about publicly, and maybe I've shared this story with you in some respect, but um I was the only parent in our organization for probably the first 6 or 7 years. We just hired, a lot of recent college grads, and they weren't at that point in their life. And maybe, I don't know, 8 years into the business, one of our employees called in sick, and she was out for a week. And here I am thinking she's interviewing and looking for a new job. And then she comes back in and we have a chat. And she actually shared with me that she had had a miscarriage, and she had been out and called in sick because she didn't know the policy. And she had been an employee for probably 5 years at this point. She was not new. She'd even helped write our handbook, but we didn't have a policy. And so in my eyes, any other leader might be like, okay, you live and learn. But in my eyes, that was a miss on my part. Like, I saw my employees growing up. I saw them, move in with a fiance, get married. This was going to be their next step. I'm also someone who struggled myself with fertility. And so when I was in the corporate world, I was struggling silently and sneaking around to appointments because we had no policy. And this
Right.
was, 18 years ago. But when she shared that with me, that to me was a big miss. Like, why didn't we think of that? Like, yes, we have a maternity policy, we have a bereavement policy, but there's so much more to it just for this situation. And that conversation where she shared that with me led to many discussions. A paternity policy came out of that, which was one thing. We ended up creating a pregnancy loss, kind of like an additional
Yeah.
incremental bereavement, and then a fertility policy. So if you need time off for a procedure or anything, mental to process what you're going through, there's a policy for that. And so I bring this up not because every company needs to have these policies, but when a policy is there, it creates space for someone to say, I don't want to talk about it, but I'm using this policy this week.
Yeah.
And we support you. And when you come back, we are here if you need us. And I think that is how I learned my lesson, and I feel like we overcorrected it. One other thing it led to is creating a caretaker policy, because as we started to roll out all these policies around starting families, we also realized half our team didn't have families. Maybe they never planned to have children. And so a caretaker policy became something we looked at, where that's what you would use if you needed to take your dog to the vet for a day. Same policy if you need to go, bring your grandma lunch in the middle of the day. So just creating these policies, talking about it is really the foundation. I'm not going to say that we're doing everything perfectly, but we're not ignoring important human things that affect people's work. And just by acknowledging it, I think it makes a really big difference in the way just we go about our work, the way we connect as a team, the way I lead, and set the right examples.
Yeah. I think those are amazing. And there are plenty of times that we didn't have a policy attached to it, but the fertility policy would have been really nice to exercise. Now, in the way that my career unfolded, I found myself unemployed at that time.
Mhm.
But the company was really gracious to allow me to keep my insurance,
Mhm.
knowing that I was going to have a procedure coming up.
Exactly.
And where I am now, my boss has been very generous with flexibility of, as long as I get my work done and my clients are happy, it's okay that a friend of mine went into labor and now I'm playing single mom at her house, watching her little ones while her family is traveling to be there, or at the hospital supporting her. And so that there's so much, like you said, there's so much more to life than I've lost a loved one or I've had a baby. A lot of life happens in between those things, and that is simply not everybody's story. So I love that you guys are sort of paving the way and allowing those conversations to be normalized in the workplace if somebody chooses to engage in them. And if not, it is still very normal, appropriate, and acceptable to say, like you said, I don't want to talk about this right now. And
Mhm.
I don't ever want to talk about it, but just so you know, I'm exercising this thing, which automatically, as a leader and a teammate, lets you know a space to have empathy for them and a way to do that somewhat specifically.
Mhm. Exactly. And I don't think a lot of companies do this because they simply don't think about it. And if they face a situation where they have an opportunity to correct it, I'm in a privileged position where I own a small company. I lead the charge when something's important to me. I can drive change. But again, it's exactly what you just said. It's not somebody hearing this and saying like, wow, I really wish my company thought of that. It's not you going to the CEO and demanding that, we bring in a lawyer and rewrite our handbook. It's talking to someone you trust. Like, what happens when our employees go through things like this?
Mhm.
What you just said, Whitney, it's such a funny example because I want to hire the person that goes and takes care of their friend after she had a baby. Do you know what I'm saying? Like that tells me so much about you. And like as much as I'm like, oh darn it, she's taking a paid day off and I'm gonna lose, her service this day. That's the kind of human I want on my team. And so yeah, I think it's just like creating the conversation, making it normal,
Mhm.
and still being respectful. I mean, I have no problem with you being, at your friend's house. But if you need to go at 2, I just ask that you wait till 3 till, we have our status meeting or whatnot. So just being respectful, like we try to end most of our meetings by 3 p.m. also because of time zones. Um,
Yes.
but get your work done and I will trust you and go be a good person when you're not working. That's what I care about.
Right. Right. And I think the same goes for, I would love your perspective on this is there are people who are reentering society, and I know so many people that are new at their jobs, and I was one of them. I needed space and a little bit of flexibility to make it to my therapy appointments in my early recovery because I needed help. I needed professional medical help to make
Yeah.
it through that stage of life and to be a good employee.
Yeah.
And I was at a place where that was not accommodated. And I ended up having to find a new job after just a few months because it was not sustainable for me. And that was really tough. And in the next role that I took, I promised myself that I would have to be bold and vulnerable and ask for the things that I really needed so that I could show up as the best version of myself each day.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm hoping that as the the narration of well-being and like mental wellness is on the scene, like those kind of things are also being taken into consideration.
Absolutely. And I think you make a really good point because a lot of this conversation, populated after 2020. It's like now everyone's isolated and having this, everyone's in a mental health crisis. What are you doing for your employees? My first instinct went to, oh my God, we need to offer therapists and we need to create support groups. And even though they have insurance, we need to make it very easy for them to get therapy.
Yeah.
We looked into something like that and we couldn't afford it. I mean, when you think of like, therapy, let's say I'm going to pay 30 people's $50 copay once a week. Like, no,
A lot.
we can't do that. Exactly. And then I really realized like that's not what it's about. Like our insurance policy is better than most people even have. So use that, to assist with finding your therapist, covering your therapist. What we can do is understand. What we can do is create space. And I think that's what companies are missing. I think companies go right to like, oh, are we, mental wellness? So we need to have a massage for our team or a masseuse on staff. No, it just means that that conversation about emotional, physical, spiritual wellness is allowed and not even just allowed, it's almost encouraged for anyone who is open to talking about it.
Yeah. And I think it's necessary for anybody that wants to be a leader, a company owner, a team manager. If you're working with other people and you're in some sort of space of authority, I think you need to be prepared to have those conversations. And I do think some people are not, and that has a ripple effect on the team and in the organization.
Absolutely. I mean, think of that. I mean, think of like if you had an employee reporting to you who just called in sick for a week, you had no idea why, they came back, they didn't say a word to you. Like there's resentment, there's a loss of trust
Mhm.
versus the HR director saying like, "Hey, just so you know, she was out for this reason. She'll be back next week. Let's just support her how we can." Like such a different vibe and employee experience. And again, it's not crossing a line where you're forcing people to talk about something uncomfortable or personal. It's just acknowledging that we all have shit. Sorry, I hope I could swear on your podcast. Um, we all have stuff. So it's like just acknowledge that no one's is better or worse than anyone else's, but it's going to be there. So don't ignore it. As a leader, as a colleague, as an owner, whatever it is, just don't ignore it.
Right. And I think the empathy that somebody's life experiences might be different than mine, there's a lot of compassion, and I think that is a lot of self-awareness and training that I have to take upon myself, right? To be able to have that empathy and that understanding towards people that are experiencing things that I have not, or that I may never.
Exactly. And that's I think the hardest thing. If you going back to the story about my employee who lost a pregnancy, like that that was important because I had gone through it, and so it just really, really triggered me. But even if I hadn't gone through it, like, would I ever have realized that? Would, and it's empathy. Like, I 5 years ago, I didn't have a pet, so pet insurance wasn't important to me, even if it was important to my team members. But you can't operate like that. You can't just think about like what the leaders need. It's about the whole organization. And again, recognizing like the caretaker policy is such a good example of like, we're not just going to, give anyone trying to have a family all these additional policies. Like we see you guys too, and everyone has the opportunity to use what they need in that season of their life. So
Yeah.
empathy is so important. It's easy if you've been through it, but if it's a situation, especially for a man to look at a miscarriage situation like that requires a lot of empathy and putting your own emotions and history aside to really understand what the team goes through.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important piece because in the industry that we're in, it
Mhm.
is very male dominated, and I reported to a fully male leadership team at
Mhm.
the time where I had to say, I just so you know, I'm about to have a lot of doctor's appointments. There's going to be a surgery down the road. I'm okay.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I'm going to ask for some understanding because I will be out of office a good bit. And I promise, like, work will not drop. The team will be taken care of. They understand what to do when they need things. And, there was some hesitation and I think maybe a little bit of fear.
I was gonna say that is so great. I actually give you a lot of credit for speaking up and being able to express that because I think back to my earlier career, like I would have just stayed silent and that would have made everything worse. I would have been sneaking around, I would have been resentful, I would have, but like
Yeah.
good for you for even just thinking it through and having the self-awareness to be like, I'm going to put this is important to me and it's important for them to know I'm going through this. Yeah, I commend you for that. It takes
Thank
bravery.
you. I mean, but it's taken a long time,
Mhm.
right, to be able to get to the place where I feel okay advocating for myself, and it's something that I talk to my team about, and
Mhm.
what kind of person would I be? What kind of hypocrite would I be if I tell my team, like, I want you to be able to come to me about things? Obviously, you don't have to, but I do want this to be a safe space or as safe a space as you need to go through what you're going through as a person, but
Mhm.
then to not do that. And so, like, my team, very well aware of what was going on, very well of the details of what was going on.
Yeah.
My leadership team, that the one person that I reported directly to, I did tell them about it, and this was a father, so I think there was some
Mhm.
understanding.
Mhm.
But that's why I said I hope that this becomes more normal, where we're learning to advocate for ourselves. And a part of that is because I was met with a little bit of resentment from an employer a few years prior when I was trying to advocate for myself. And I made it a point that if that's ever a problem, that's not a place that I need to be at anymore. I've officially outgrown that organization.
Good for you. Yeah. And it takes a lot of emotional and professional maturity to get there. And there's a lot of people who aren't in a position to, whether it's their skill set, whether it's the economy, like they're not in a position to walk away from a company that, isn't treating them the way they should. One day they will be though.
Yeah.
So, and one day they will be a better leader because of what they've observed. It's like, you kind of either learn what to do from your parents or what not to do to make you the best possible parent. And that's kind of how I think as a leader. Like I have observed so many leaders in this industry that I have really shaped myself into the kind of leader I want to be,
Right.
really self-aware of the things that I don't want to be. Um,
Right.
And like one of those things, I think I started to bring this up earlier and then I went somewhere else. But one of those things was like, I I was the leader that never took a vacation. Like my team needs me. I am there. I am on the beach. I will have a margarita in my hand, maybe, but I will like be there and ready to have the conversation. And I really needed my team to push back on me and be like, you can't do that and then tell us to go enjoy our vacation because
Yep.
we all think you're expecting that of us. And so it's been an amazing thing for me to be like, I have to detach. I will admit in the beginning, I still was working a lot. I was just schedule sending emails or, I was like, not, I was working, but not letting anyone know I was working. But the last like 2 or 3 times I've been out of the office, I really have been thinking like, I am setting an example. And
Yeah.
even if I don't come out and say, you need to work because I work, that has to be the example. I'll give you one other quick example. But like when I flew with two of my team members to San Antonio, where I saw you at the TIA conference a few
Yep.
weeks ago. And as we were boarding the plane, I looked at them and I said, I don't care what you do on the plane. I personally love working on a plane because no one knows where to find me. I'm out of the office. Like I can get a lot of good, flow work done. But just because I have my laptop open, if I'm next to you, like I don't care if you're sleeping. I don't care if you're watching Netflix. And I had to stop myself because I realized I used to get on planes and work next to my boss because she was working. So how could I not work if she was working? And I think my team was just like, thank you. Like they're like, good, we were gonna watch Netflix anyway, but thank you for saying that so we don't feel the pressure. But it's just like having those conversations and voicing that.
Yeah. I agree with the mentality that if the leader doesn't set the expectations, people will follow suit with whatever that is. Like I have sent a message on a day when our office was closed and got a reply back of no ma'am, log off.
Right? Exactly.
and,
Like,
and I was like, well, I was out, so I had a few things like, okay, I'll log off. And that for me, I appreciate somebody that says, like, I also want to protect your time away because we all need time away at some point. Like, we all need to decompress. And like, I see the week that you've had and the work
yeah,
that you've done. And to go to your point earlier about like, not everybody is in a place where they can walk away from the environments that maybe don't support those kind of things, where maybe it's expected, you should be working on a plane. You should be, working until the 11th hour of the day and maybe even then some.
yeah,
Um, as somebody who was in a place, like I say that I left, it took a while to get to, a couple of months of dealing with that. And, you know, before that, I was at an organization where I didn't realize that, and so for me, it was really two different jobs where I just was not being met where I needed to be to show up as the best employee. That, like you said, that time does come, but I think it's on us to do what we can to make it happen, right? To keep
yeah.
our eyes open, to have those conversations and those connections with other people, and even to ask and learn, right?
Mhm.
Like, what does your boss do? What are the policies at your company? Like, understanding the things that I was missing out on, like knowing that there might be a boss out there that says, oh, by the way, like, feel free to
Right.
watch that movie that I definitely saw you downloading
Exactly.
while we're in the
Exactly.
airport. Like, I'm going to be doing this thing. That would have never crossed my mind to communicate that with a teammate of mine. And I've traveled with teammates. So now
Mhm.
I'm thinking, in the future, that's a good one to tuck into my back pocket.
And it's interesting just to kind of like circle back to your whole theme of the conversation. That is something I've really learned about myself, and I think a lot of business owners and leaders would say that I'm missing a huge opportunity, but I do not like to do business at the bar. And in our industry, like that is where the
Mm,
business happens. And so as a leader, I've always, I mean, you know this about me, like I go to these conferences, I will hustle from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., maybe 8 p.m. But I am not going to do shots to get a contract with someone. I am not going to feel uncomfortable or harassed as the only woman. And I'm not saying that that's always what happens, but I've set that precedent with my team now. There have been trips I've taken where they want to do business at the bar, my team members. So here's the credit card, go have fun, stay under control. But listen, I'm not going to force anyone to do that. Like we can get plenty done by showing up sober, engaged, energetic during the day, which is
right.
what we're really there for. And so I think that's another thing. People would be like, oh, you're missing so much opportunity when you go up and, rest. Like, okay, I am, but I'm creating opportunity for tomorrow. And I made space for today's opportunity because I gave myself that downtime and I'm not hiding it from my team. I'm
Yeah.
actually, offering it to them. But if that's not for them, there's something else.
Right. And I love that you don't sacrifice that for yourself, right? Like that is a boundary that you have for yourself and you stick to it. And I think that's really important because as somebody who doesn't drink, deals for me are never made at the bar.
Exactly, exactly. Well, and I will say, I don't think I've ever really made one. I think in my early career, I was there. I was at that bar till 1 in the morning. And then for whatever reason, I just was like, this is not the way I do business. I build relationships, like true relationships, not under the influence. So, yeah. And I think in our industry, especially when you go to these conferences, it's very obvious that that's where the bros go and you have to make the decision to show up or show up somewhere else where you're going to be memorable in a different way. The right.
Yes. And I like to use that time to get to know the person, right? Because I've spent all day hustling.
Mhm.
I've watched your
Mhm.
demo. We've talked about the things. And now like I want to like show me that you said you had a kid. Show me a picture of your kid. Like I'm the person that gets excited about pictures of other, oh, your daughter went to prom. I'd love to see that. You have a chicken. Like I talked to somebody the other day that he was like, yeah, we moved on a farm. We've got all these chickens. And I was like, that's so fun. How many do you have? How big is your farm? Like,
Yeah,
and using that time to build those relationships and for me is a better use of my time. But I am with you because there is a hard stop for me. And my conference routine, I take a
mhm.
face mask, I pretend like it's a spa night, I put something on the TV and I wind down and I don't open my computer and do emails or work or anything. Like I allow myself because the day has already been so packed
Yeah.
to take a beat so that like you said, I'm now making space for tomorrow's opportunities and I find that to be important.
Exactly. No, I think we're very much on the same page there. And yeah, I mean, I don't want to discount the fact that like the work we do, the work you do, like it's hard and it's a 40 plus hour a week job. So it's not, I don't want people to interpret this as like, wow, it'd be nice to, work for a company where the boss is so lax. Like I'm not lax. I'm just human. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm just human about it, that like I have seen enough people need enough things that I have created space for and it's actually led to even better things. So why not keep doing that? Um,
Right.
and get your work done when you do it, especially now. Like if you can make yourself more efficient through technology and still hit your goals and still go to your therapist and still go to bed at 8, like more power to you, you know?
Yeah, and it's like you said, that's the harmony, right? Because you and your team, you do hustle. You have very high expectations for the people that you've hired, and that's why the advocacy of your time away and your time unplugged and your time to rest and recharge is really important because when you come back to work, I expect quality work from you, understanding that not every day you're going to show up at 100%, but if you're not, how can I help you get there?
Exactly, exactly. And I love your story about the chickens because I think that's like my whole thing. It's like just find one thing in common with someone. Like I saw you lift your mug a couple times. Like, that's all I need to know, that you drink a hot beverage in the morning. Me too. What do you drink? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, tell me about the lamp in your background. It looks vintage. Where'd you get it? Like, that's what people I think are missing, is like, all it takes, even if it's the weather, you have that in common to start a
Mhm.
conversation and maybe go somewhere else to truly build a relationship with them as a human. And yes, 99% of the relationship is business, but that little 1% that's more about the holistic person is going to make a big difference.
Yeah, it is. And I think that that's a great takeaway, um, on the business side, and also like for this episode, is there has to be, I think, a harmony in you and what you're doing. And it might not be, like you said, maybe it isn't balanced. Maybe it feels balanced to me, but it doesn't look balanced to you.
Mhm.
And once we find that for ourselves, we can help other people advocate for themselves. We can help them find that for themselves. And I think that that's really the only way that change is actually made. And sometimes
Yeah.
that's going to be through those relationships that we're working towards building.
I love that you just said that it doesn't look the same for everyone, because a couple weekends ago, my two older boys play lacrosse for the high school, and we had a game, and I knew like halftime is 20 minutes, and it's just you sit there for 20 minutes. And I brought my laptop and I opened it up and I kind of like went somewhere else in the bleachers, and someone's like, "Man, you don't stop." Like, they kind of like were pitying me for having a laptop at halftime on a Saturday. And in my mind, I was like, yeah, but because I'm doing this 20 minutes of work now, I was at the game this week, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday night I went. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, to me, that's the harmony. Like, this is not a punishment. I chose to squeeze in this 20 minutes of work because I have taken advantage, or I will take advantage of other pockets. Like, I'm here. And so the fact that I can be here for a 2-hour game, even if the halftime I'm going to log on to my email, I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point, is like, I have no idea what balance looks like to you. And if it's just being able to go to a therapist once a week, like, great. If it's taking care of your grandma an extra 25 hours a week, like, let me understand that about you, and it's going to change our relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh, what a good set of advice for leaders and
Yeah.
aspiring leaders, because it's never too late and it's never too early to start putting these things into practice.
And I wish that when I was going through my own stuff, like, I think I thought I had to go to the boss and be like, "We need a policy. I'm going through this and nobody knows, and I don't," but all it is just a conversation. Like, it
Mhm.
I don't care if you've been working somewhere for 6 months, you have every right to say to your supervisor, like, "Hey, I'm going through something. I just wanna make sure, like, is there anything I need to know about the way it's handled here?" Um,
Mhm.
and that's, I wish I would've asked and approached it that way versus me hiding it because I just thought it was like you know, an off-topic subject, which it was, but I still could have brought it up.
Yeah. Hopefully we'll, like I said, we'll see more things hitting the scene as normal conversations, um, standardized routine ways to communicate with each other in the workspace. And I think, just like the origin of this podcast about sober conversations, this is still another way to advocate for yourself. And I think it just happens one conversation at a time,
Yeah,
and we're working towards it.
you're doing it. You're putting the conversations out there, so love it.
Well, we are at the end of time. This has been a fantastic episode, and it's been so good to catch up with you.
You too.
And if anybody has questions about like how to do these things, or wants to learn a little bit more from you, how can people contact you?
Yeah, I would say LinkedIn is the easiest way to find me. I'm there every day except days that I'm on PTO now. I do. That is another thing that I have really forced myself to do, is like really be gone, which means I'm not showing up on LinkedIn even if I'm out of the office. But follow me on LinkedIn. Our company puts out a lot of great content. We have a lot of jobs, webinars. So CS Recruiting or Charlie Saffro, I'd love to hear from you.
All right. And to everybody else, we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Whitney.